What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we are taking a look at Lightbringer Rosa, the newest hero added to Torchlight Infinite. So, like previous heroes, Rosa comes with the Premium Season Pass, and she is $15. Now, she is the first sword and board hero added to the game and kind of fills like a playstyle gap for tank-oriented players. But the big question is she worth the price? So I've played her all the way up to level 90. Let's talk about what Rosa brings to the table and whether or not she's worth that price tag. So off the top, Rosa is a powerhouse, even with the starter build that the game sets you up with. Now, this initial kit will give you Earthshaker, which is basically Earthquake. It deals a large amount of damage in an area. It does proc off of Demolisher Charge, which will give you an even larger area and deal a ton of damage to everything in that area. It's a cool skill. It's a good kind of initial getting used to the game skill. Then that main skill is then propped up with Leap as your mobility skill. So if you're into like Leap Smash, this is kind of that skill there. Compound Potion for both mana and health regen, Raging Warcry to give yourself some Demolisher recharge so you can proc Earthshaker a little bit more often, and then you have Bull's Rage to sacrifice a little bit of health to deal a lot more damage. So overall, I mean, the lineup of skills that the game gives you are well thought out, and it's going to give newer players a very solid foundation to use all the way to endgame. Now, I use this setup for almost all of my testing, and I found that it gets the job done for the most part. But as you get deeper into endgame, you may want to start exploring other main skill options that maybe leverage like Steep Strike procs, for instance, things like Lightning Slash or Flame Slash, because Earthshaker is great, but it does start to lose its punch as you gain levels and begins to struggle the closer you get to level cap. So just something to keep in mind. If you're somebody that doesn't get to 100 and then like continues to pound in game, you just want to kind of play through the season a little bit, then it'll be fine. But if you're somebody who really wants to kind of min-max and squeeze the juice out of a build or a hero, then Earthshaker is probably going to be something that you want to start getting away from as you get higher in levels. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and the cons. So starting with the good, Rosa does possess insane burst damage thanks to her trait, Holy Domain. So Holy Domain is going to drop an area on the ground that'll then pull in all nearby enemies, and it'll also increase her damage, her block chance, and provide a variety of other buffs depending on what type of relics you equip. Now, this essentially turns Rosa into like a cage fighter. So as long as you stay in that area, you're going to blow everything up. You're going to survive a lot of stuff. You're going to just be kind of just a monster. And this leads to absolutely insane amounts of burst damage. You're easily able to one-tap bosses and delete enemies incredibly quick. But when you leave that area, you lose all of that juice, and you can really feel it. You can feel a big difference between I have Holy Domain down on the ground and I don't have Holy Domain down on the ground. And so this creates kind of an interesting dynamic where you need to be strategic where you place this area, especially for bosses that move around a lot. So if you know bosses are going to move, okay, you know, top of the arena, bottom right, bottom left, and if you kind of know that rotation, then you can place your Holy Domain ahead of time. That way you can meet them there and get the most bang for your buck in terms of duration for as long as they're going to stay in that spot. Now, the other part of Rosa's trait is called Murderous Intent. This is essentially rage. So this is a meter that will fill as you block spells and attacks. And this is required in order to cast her Holy Domain trait. So you can sort of see the cycle playing out here, right? So you're going to block incoming damage to fill your Murderous Intent meter. Then you're going to use that charge in your Murderous Intent meter to then drop your domain to pull in enemies, gain an arsenal of buffs, and then destroy anything near you. You're going to rinse and repeat this process over and over again. So that's sort of her overall playstyle. Now, continuing with the good, Rosa is also incredibly tanky for an ARPG hero. She has huge amounts of block chance, lots of survival buffs. She makes soaking damage easy. And if you're someone who's like new to the genre and you want something sort of approachable to learn the mechanics of the game, Rosa would be a great starter hero if she didn't cost money to unlock. Now, an alternative would be like Moto. If you don't mind Zookeeper builds, it's easier to sort of stay alive and let your minions do the damage, but that's for another video another time. So those are the pros. Insane burst damage, incredibly tanky, and comes with a great starter build. Let's talk about the cons of Rosa. Outside of the price, we know that's obviously a big con. So outside of the price, first and foremost, Rosa is not going to be a playstyle for everyone. Her rotation can be very clunky, it can be very rough if it's not set up correctly, since she requires you to move, stop, drop her holy domain, and then cast your main skill. If you want a walking simulator or a fast build, Rosa is not the character for you. She's going to struggle with that type of playstyle. Now this plays directly into her second con, which is her movement speed. So by default, she does have a negative 5% movement speed penalty, which makes her naturally slower than other heroes. Now both of these things are pretty straightforward, and honestly they weren't a big issue for me because I knew what I was getting into, right? You see the kind of the trailer and everything, and you're like, okay, I know how this is going to play out. But I do know a few friends of mine that tried her and they just did not like the way she worked and what she required in order to be successful. Now, where I found the biggest frustration for me personally is her over-dependence on Holy Domain to be effective. Now, don't get me wrong, it's an insanely powerful buff. This thing is incredibly powerful. It juices Rosa beyond belief. But in a game where everything is always moving, whether it's you, whether it's enemies, whether it's bosses, having to rely on a stationary and small circle to stand in and just deal damage doesn't really work well in this version of Torchlight. Now, when they add multiplayer, then maybe it'll work better because you can pull everything in and you can aggro and you don't really have to like depend on your damage. But for now, I'm constantly chasing bosses to drop my domain and then begin attacking. And it's great when it works, right? If you can kill something with your burst, it's fantastic. Because again, you can literally drop it, you can activate Bull's Rage, and you can hit an Earthshaker with a demolition charge, and you'll deal incredible amounts of damage. You'll just blow everything up. But the problem is, if the boss survives your first couple punches, then your damage slows way down because Holy Domain will run out of duration and it'll disappear. Then Bull's Rage, you don't want to pop that all the time because it takes your health. Then you're waiting for your Demolisher charges to come back. And so you kind of have everything off cooldown and you're sort of just surviving until everything comes back off cooldown and you're able to sort of line up all of your buffs again. So that's the problem. It becomes a much longer fight than it needs to be. So to me, I would have really liked to see like a baseline trait, maybe unlocked around mid-game, that allows her domain to follow her for a certain duration. That way, maybe it'll consume double the amount of murderous intent to sort of balance it, but you can go activate your domain and then you can kind of move with bosses or move with enemies and still continue to have your buffs. So those are the cons, right? Not going to be a playstyle for everyone, naturally slower than other heroes, over dependence on her holy domain to be effective. But guys, I mean, all in all, Rosa is a fun character. I think certain players will really enjoy her build, the way she plays. If you're a natural, like, tank-oriented individual, then I think Rosa will work well for you because you understand that. Almost all tanks are slower. They don't deal as much damage, right? They're more like block and survival oriented. So I think that's fine going into it. But for me, I'd much rather spend my time on a Corrosive Throw Erica, an Erosion Iuga, or try a new build like Icy Ring. So for me, Rosa is not worth the $15 at this time. But honestly, guys, that's just one man's opinion. I want to hear from you. What do all of you think? If you bought her, how's your kind of first initial impressions going? And if you didn't buy her, why not? What kept you from pulling the trigger outside of the cost? Let me know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.